The whole thing started in a way that barely registered at first. Alicia Gray turned toward the Indiana Fever section, pointed, and waved for security to come over. On live TV, it was quick, almost background noise compared to the action on the court, but the ripple effects were immediate. A few fans stood up looking confused, staff escorted them away, and the broadcast camera cut away. For those watching in real time, it looked serious, like something ugly had just been shouted from the stands. Atlanta's message was clear. Their star had been disrespected, their team wronged. The Dream wanted the narrative to shift away from the scoreboard and toward the crowd. But within hours, the whole thing began to unravel. Security didn't just escort those fans out and keep them gone. They brought them back. Apologized even. One eyewitness claimed the heckle was nothing more than a simple comment. "You're good, Lex." She's not even trying anymore. That wasn't aimed at Gray at all. It was encouragement for Lexi Hull. Not vulgar, not threatening, not even unusual for a playoff crowd. Yet somehow that small remark had snowballed into a scene. Fans online couldn't believe it. If security was letting people back to their seats, it was obvious there had been no serious violation. The only conclusion people drew was that Gray had overreacted, frustrated with her own poor play, and turned her anger onto fans. The optics were disastrous. Instead of Atlanta looking sympathetic, they looked rattled. Social media lit up with clips of the moment, with posts tearing apart the inconsistencies in Atlanta's story. One camp mocked Gray for being thin-skinned. Another camp accused her of trying to create a distraction from her own struggles on the floor. And by the next day, the entire episode was being described as a hoax, a weak attempt to redirect attention that only made things worse. That contrast couldn't have been sharper because on the other side, Indiana wasn't distracted. They were too busy making history. While the Dream were fumbling their narratives, the Fever were snapping a playoff drought, feeding off a roaring home crowd, and reminding everyone why playoff basketball in Indianapolis carries its own kind of magic. The scoreboard told the only truth that mattered. Indiana was alive. Atlanta was grasping. The setting added weight to every play. Gainbridge Fieldhouse hadn't hosted a playoff game since 2016, back when Tamika Catchings was still suiting up. Nearly a decade later, the building was desperate for the taste of postseason success again. Red shirts filled the lower bowl, chants of "Let's Go Fever" rattled the rafters, and the crowd treated every defensive stand like a game-winning shot. For a roster missing key players, that energy wasn't just helpful, it was survival. Caitlin Clark was sidelined for the season. Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, Chloe Bibby, and Ari McDonald were unavailable too. Indiana should have been reeling. Instead, they leaned on grit. From the opening minutes, you could see the difference from Game 1. Quicker rotations, harder box outs, sharper cuts. Head coach Stephanie White had criticized her team for a lack of desperation in Atlanta, and her players responded. They contested everything, fought for every 50-50 ball, and refused to give the referees any excuse to tilt the game. On the bench, Clark was standing, cheering, smiling, her energy infectious. She couldn't play, but her presence fueled her teammates. Aaliyah Boston went to work inside, using her footwork and strength to punish mismatches. Kelsey Mitchell, overlooked for years, played like a star, drilling deep threes and slicing through defenders with her first step. Natasha Howard did the dirty work, altering shots on defense while quietly adding double-digit points. Ariel Powers came in off the bench flexing after and ones. Rookie Michaela Timmons chipped in 9 points like she had been here before. And then there was Lexi Hull, who capped the third quarter with a buzzer-beating 3 after Boston muscled in a bucket and Petty stole the ball. That stretch broke Atlanta's spirit. What had been a tight game suddenly tilted into a double-digit lead, and the Fever never looked back. By the final horn, the scoreboard screamed the truth: Indiana 77, Atlanta 60. The Dream had managed just 60 points on 37.9% shooting and a miserable 5 for 19 from deep. They looked overwhelmed, suffocated by a Fever defense that contested everything and boxed out with discipline. What stood out most was how collective it all felt. Everyone bought in. No shortcuts, no waiting for someone else to save the night. Afterward, Coach White praised her players' resilience. Boston highlighted the hustle plays. Mitchell credited the crowd for flipping the energy. Their words matched what fans had seen, an undermanned roster refusing to fold, proving that heart and discipline can outweigh absences. The Fever hadn't just survived without Caitlin Clark. They had dominated. That's why the Alicia Gray incident looked so hollow by comparison. While Indiana built momentum on the floor, Atlanta tried to create a storyline in the stands, only to be exposed when the so-called offending fans returned to their seats with smiles. Instead of sympathy, the Dream drew ridicule. Instead of distraction, the Fever drew focus. One team proved ready for the spotlight. The other showed it couldn't handle the heat. But as much as Game 2 was a celebration, it wasn't the end. The series is tied. Everything rides on Game 3 in Atlanta. That's where the Fever's resilience will be tested hardest. The Dream will come out desperate, eager to erase the embarrassment of scoring just 60 points. Their stars Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray combined for only 19 points in Game 2. You can bet they'll be hunting redemption in front of their home crowd. Indiana has to replicate the same suffocating defense that silenced them in Indianapolis. Limit those two again, and the Fever have the upper hand. For Mitchell, the challenge is clear. Maintain her rhythm against more aggressive perimeter pressure. For Boston, it's about staying out of foul trouble as Atlanta feeds their bigs. For Timpson, it's about proving her poised Game 2 cameo wasn't a fluke. And for role players like Hull, Howard, and Powers, it's about those hustle plays that don't always make headlines but swing playoff games. The stakes couldn't be higher. One team advances, one team goes home. For Indiana, it's the chance to shed the rebuilding label and announce themselves as a true contender, even without their biggest star. For Atlanta, it's about saving face after a humiliating collapse. Every possession matters now. Every rotation, every box out, every loose ball will define the season. That's why this series feels bigger than just the first round. The Fever already proved they can thrive in adversity. Imagine what this same core looks like in 2 years when Clark is healthy and the bench is deeper. Game 2 wasn't just a win. It was a preview of a future where Indiana is back among the WNBA elite. As for Alicia Gray, her moment with the crowd will fade. What fans will remember is Indiana's roar. The long playoff drought snapped. The resilience of a shorthanded roster. The sound of Gainbridge Fieldhouse shaking after Hull's 3. Those are the memories that stick, not the false alarms in the stands. Because at the end of the day, the scoreboard never lies. If you've got the Fever, you already know what to say.